We're here today to discuss the case of Clive Freeman. Now, we've done a piece on the channel before about Clive Freeman, but there have been updates and there's been a lot of interest by the Daily Mail, which I think, Tony, you've instigated or been involved. So for the people who are watching who don't know the background of this case, maybe, Tony, you could give us just the background and why you've become involved.
Thanks, Liam. Yes, great to be on the program today, and with Terry as well. In fact, it was Terry that contacted me after I initially met Clive in Leyhill prison back last year, about 9 months ago now. Clive Freeman has been in prison for what appears to be a huge miscarriage of justice for some nearly 36 years now. He was arrested in Australia in 1988 for a murder that, to all intents and purposes, didn't happen. All the evidence suggests that there was never any murder. So why is he still in prison for such a lengthy time? The circumstances are quite complicated, but he had an alibi. He wasn't there at the time. If I can tell you initially how I came to meet him, I do work a voluntary work with the veterans, military veterans, and I met him at a veterans event in Leyhill Prison, where he currently is and has been for at least 10 years now. And one of the other prisoners introduced me to him and said, "Can you help Terry?" And it was just at the end of the meeting, and I said, "Well, I'll have a look at it, and I will come back later because the session had finished." I gave him my details, and a couple of weeks later, Terry Wilcock telephoned me and said, "I understand that you're willing to help Clive." And we had a discussion. And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I know nothing about the case at all, apart from what I read online after meeting Clive." And so I went back to Leyhill, and I go there regularly. And as I started to uncover and recover a huge amount of information that both Clive has and Terry has, because Terry, as he'll explain to you, has been helping him for a long time. It started to appear to me that this was appeared to be an astonishing miscarriage of justice, and that there was no murder at all, and he is an innocent man languishing in a British jail for a long, long period. And so I took the case on. I'm not a lawyer. I've studied. I've got a law degree, but I'm a former police officer for 32 years, and the last 18 years as a superintendent, and done a lot of investigations. So I started investigating the case from a police perspective, to try and identify what went wrong and how did he get in, and more importantly, how we can get him out.
Absolutely. And Terry, of course, you were inside with Clive. Now, at any point during this time, if he had admitted his guilt, he could have come out, couldn't he?
Yes, he had a life sentence with a tariff of 13 years, somewhat 23 years after that tariff had expired. He still remains in prison because he refuses to plead guilty for a crime that he didn't commit. In fact, a crime that never was.
When you were with him, was there any doubt with him at all that, was there some points that he thought, yes, I'm going to say that I was guilty just to get out? I mean, it would be kind of normal, wouldn't it, to do that?
It would be normal for 99.9% of the male prison population to do that, of course. Why would anybody want to remain in prison 23 years after he could have been released? But Clive is a special character. He's a very determined and loyal, honest, and his integrity is enormous. And he made a promise to Aura, his wife, that he wouldn't leave prison exonerated, and he keeps to that. He reminds himself of that every day, and he keeps to that promise.
Am I right in thinking that he's not a well man as well?
No, he's not well. He's got prostate cancer. He's had that for some time now. There is going to be no more treatment, so I suppose he is having palliative care, but he doesn't talk about his health. He asks how I am and those that are close to me. He asks about Tony and Michael and Aaron, Sandra, Father Hugh, Bruce, all that have helped him in this latest campaign to free Clive Freeman. I started that campaign with the people who were involved right now on the day I was released in December 2013. After me too making a promise I wouldn't break to Clive, that I would do everything I could to see that this terrible miscarriage of justice is overturned. I think Tony will now tell you about where we are at the latest application to the CCRC. Tony's done a magnificent 50-page report, which has been submitted to the CCRC, and it's under consideration.
This is like the 5th representation, is it? Which is kind of unheard of. And do they not have to have fresh evidence every time?
As I continued with my investigation, it became clear to me that there's many things wrong with the whole process. In my view, and looking at it as a former police officer, there wasn't enough evidence to charge him. If the police had done their investigations correctly, there wasn't enough evidence to charge him in the first place. Since then, the various institutions of the state, right the way through to the Criminal Cases Review Commission, have handled it really badly, particularly the Criminal Cases Review Commission. For the viewers, if you're in prison and there is something wrong with your conviction, either your sentence or the fact that you believe that you were convicted wrongly and there was a miscarriage of justice, it is the only avenue up to you once you've gone through your initial appeal and appeal court applications. The Criminal Cases Review Commission is the only way that you can get your convictions reviewed and hopefully quashed at the Court of Appeal Criminal Division. So you have to go over the Criminal Cases Review Commission hurdle before you get to the Court of Appeal, and that's where we are at the moment. So there is a long and detailed, painstaking process to get your application in, and this is now the 5th one. And this started way back in 2000. So 4 applications have gone in, very detailed, well-argued submissions, but each time the Criminal Cases Review Commission have rejected the application, and various pieces of new evidence, particularly the pathology evidence, over the years. And the test that they have to legally fulfill is there a real possibility that the Court of Appeal, having looked at any new evidence or new circumstances, will quash the conviction and basically chuck it out as unsafe. So what the Court of Appeal do is look at it and say, we consider this conviction is unsafe for the following grounds. They don't say this person is innocent. They say it is unsafe because there may well be people who have been convicted because of misconduct by the police, for example. So it renders it unsafe. So that's what the Court of Appeal will do, and that's what we're hoping to do this time. So I developed the paperwork and the submission on behalf of Clive, submitted it on the 17th of August last year, and eventually the Criminal Cases Review Commission agreed to meet me, and Terry was there, and Father Hugh, who's been on the programme before, I believe, and also Michael Norton from Dr. Michael Norton from the Bristol University Law School. And I presented the facts of the case, plus some other reports as well. So there is an overwhelming documented evidence base of why the Criminal Cases Review Commission, or the CCRC as it's known, should refer to the Court of Appeal. When we left the meeting on the 17th of January, I was told I will get a reply because I'm now his official representative on behalf of Clive and representing the team as well. I will get a response. It doesn't necessarily mean a decision within 3 months. So on the 19th of April, they are obliged to give me some response. Now, in the meantime, bearing in mind that if you look at the Andrew Malkinson case, and particularly the post office scandal, you need some heavy hitting at national level, at the media level. So I went to speak with my long professional friend Stephen Wright of the Daily Mail, who I've known from my police days, and I then had to convince him that this was a case worth pursuing, because there's lots of people who claim their innocence, and certainly a national newspaper or any media organisation will have to do its own due diligence, and Stephen Wright has done a huge amount of work. But first I had to convince him that the case was worth following. I can't just say to him, Stephen, can you just do a piece on this? And so far, up to today's date, he's got 8 pages in the Daily Mail in 4 different sessions. He's working on another one, and there's more to come. And as we saw the post office scandal, unfortunately, some of those poor people had been waiting the failures had been identified 20 years ago. Why do we have to have a system where you have to rely on very limited media coverage to push this into public profile? So in addition to looking to get Clive out, we're looking to, and in particular, and others want to get the system changed for the better, so that other people that are in there unlawfully or that have been convicted illegally, in my view, that they can also have a faster route to have their cases reviewed. The system is, and I know lots of people say systems are broken, but it's not working as it should. And Clive's case, the post office scandal, Andrew Malkinson, to name but a few, but these are sort of recent ones that are hitting the headlines. So we really need some change. From our point of view, we want to get Clive out, but there's a bigger public interest picture here about the system that clearly is failing justice.
So Terry, do you have some hope now that it's been serialized almost in the Daily Mail, that this may speed up the process, give it a chance of success?
Well, Clive was granted priority status by the CCRC because of the amount of time he spent in prison, his age and his health, which usually takes around about the 6-month stage. Now, he has priority status previously in the applications. One in particular I was involved with was the 2015 to 17, and that took actually 3 years for him to get a decision, which was a negative decision. So it's appalling that because of his age, he's 80 now, and his health, he's got advanced cancer, and the loss of his parents, his wife, his brother, his cousins, a lot of his friends and family have passed. He comes from a place where it's not really safe to live, and this guy should be dealt with almost immediately. Now, I do understand they have to do the scrutinising of the submissions, but they have seen a lot of what has been submitted on 5 occasions, because it is duplicated with additional evidence, which we have uncovered on this occasion. But yet they seem to, they've said they're going to contact us on the 19th of, is it April? So, I mean, let's see what happens on the 19th of April, and we'll keep you updated, and hopefully your viewers too. And with God's willing, we may have some justice at last for Clive Freeman.
Brilliant. And Tony, I don't think this is for the viewers, we've actually really explained the case. I mean, it was a murder that took place where somebody was burnt. Is that right? And it was supposedly about getting insurance and things like that. Just give us a little bit of background of what happened.
Yes, the circumstances, I say, are quite complex. But in brief, there are 3 pillars to the prosecution's case, and one was that, and I think this is where the police thought that Clive was trying to pursue an insurance scam. And as reported, if people look online and look at the Clive Freeman case, some of the media that have been printed has been shown at there going back at the time of his arrest and conviction in 1989, show that Clive had come to the UK for a number of reasons, but one of them was to upgrade his insurance policy because of where he was working and travelling. Was taken out in the former Rhodesia, and the crash of the economy over there and the transition to Zimbabwe meant that his normal insurance policy, which he'd had for I think about 20 odd years, was the value economic wise had plummeted. So he came to London. He wanted to upgrade to an insurance policy that would pay out reasonable rates in other part outside Africa with a reasonable level of payment. So that was his proposal. He was also en route to, because of the problems then in Zimbabwe following the change of government, he was looking to move his family out of Zimbabwe and South Africa, and looking to probably emigrate to either the USA or Australia. And that's when he left left London in '88. Now, he'd been staying temporarily at a family friend's flat in East London, in Rotherhithe. The prosecutions say that Clive had lured a tramp, taken him into the flat where he lived, killed him by a process of suffocation called burking, which is a big issue around that as well, set fire to the flat with the intention of burning the body, so that the body of the man that was in there would be effectively considered to be Clive's body double.
Wasn't there so radical differences between the 2 bodies? Clive's and
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's some fun. There's lots of different elements to this. We don't have time now, but it's astonishingly distressing, particularly for Clive. But it's quite amazing how all the facts stacked up. And when you read some of the original publicity, you'll think, well, yeah, if I was on the jury, I'd convict him. But you have to, forensically, and which a lot of forensic evidence wasn't there. You have to forensically unpick it, which is what I've done and others before me, to say where the problems were. But yes, I mean, this guy was different in size, different in weight, different in health condition, and since the original. There was a battle of the pathologists, because one eminent pathologist who'd had some 44 years experience said there was no evidence of a deliberate death. This man died probably of natural causes. The pathologist for the Crown said, well, and he was a very novice pathologist. He'd only qualified, I think, about a year before. He was the Crown pathologist who said, after 3 post-mortem examinations, in fact, he did 4, that this guy died of suffocation, and he described, and he'd found it from a textbook, and I believe was prompted by the police doing some research as well, to say this was a case of Birkin, which goes back to the 1828 case of Burke and Hare. Quite astounding, really. So you had the battle of the pathologist, and lots of people before me and Terry and others have got all this really good scientific evidence over the years. So we've got some 8 or 9 pathologists that have said the Crown's expert with about a year's service has got it wrong. There was no death at all. The poor chap probably died of alcoholic poisoning, because we know he was effectively an alcoholic, and a combination of medication that he was taken. And another thing which hasn't come out too much at the moment is that the police were quite happy swanning around, going to Australia, America, South Africa, looking for evidence to try and convict, to get Clive convicted for this, the murder based on the insurance fraud motive. But they couldn't find any medical records to the poor chap that was found dead in the flat. Now we know he drank excessively. We know he was on medication. He had prescription medication prescribed by a named doctor in East London. He was on benefits. We've been on sickness benefits, and yet, the police and the Criminal Cases Review Commission were unable to find any medical records of the chap that was found dead. There's all the evidence shows there was no murder at all, and therefore, why is a man in prison 36 years after for a murder that never was? Now, there's a lot of technical stuff behind that, and some of the things, because I'm representing him and because the review is active, I need to be a little bit cautious at this stage about what I say, but it is outrageous. And if we just look at the parole situation, the parole, he even if he had been rightly convicted, and he wasn't, but even if he'd been convicted, he should have been released on license on parole over 20 years ago. In 2004, a prison governor said this chap had exemplary character in prison and behavior, and had his tariff that he'd been given, the 13 years, that expired, and he should have been walked out. Now, because Clive said, I'm not leaving prison until I'm exonerated, that in itself should not have been a barrier to him coming out. He should have been released, and the parole board have said, well, no, the parole board make decisions. We have to make sure he's not a risk to the public. I get that. I understand that. I've spent many years on the other side of the fence trying to put the bad people in. Now I'm looking at it on the other side, seeing that actually people get put in prison and for the wrong reasons and are innocent. So it's a different perspective for me, and it's quite evident that he should have been released even on parole some 20 years ago. And what it seems to be, although it's not written in the parole rules and the parole board rules, which the most recent ones are 2019, and they're updated frequently, is that it's like the person being taken out of the cell. Do you admit to the offence? No. Back in the cell. Next application comes in. Do you admit the offence? No. Back in the cell. It's a tortuous process for individuals. That even and that we must look to try and get that system overturned. It must be to get justice. Clearly, there's lots of people rightly convicted in prison, but there are a few, and the system for those that are clearly innocent, and we've no idea how many that may be, is failing them.
So, Terry, I sort of want to finish this off this short piece. You were inside with him in prison. What kind of a man is he, and how has he coped over this 30 odd years? That requires such a depth of character to stand up continually to say that you're innocent.
Yeah, I served 5 years of a 10-year sentence after being convicted of a cannabis farm cultivation, and I met Clive towards the back end of that sentence in Lay Hill Prison. I moved down to the southwest from Yorkshire and was allocated to Lay Hill Prison, Cat D, for the last 6 months of my sentence, where I met Clive Freeman under, excuse me, quite peculiar circumstances, but that's another story in itself. But Clive, I would describe him as a loner, definitely a loner, and one has to be in Lay Hill Prison because you don't know who you're dealing with in Lay Hill Prison. I think it's 85% sex offenders, child molesters, women beaters, all that type of character are in Lay Hill Prison. And so those of us what are in for, I suppose, various criminal activity relating to benefits, financial benefit, seem to have a total disregard and disrespect for those that are being in for sexual offences and offences against women and children. So Clive was a loner. I've seen him many times talking into a dictaphone, walking around the prison by himself on an evening. It was winter time. And I made a beeline for him. I seen him in the library. We're always by himself. I made a beeline for him. It didn't take to me immediately, but eventually with persistence, we did get talking. He wouldn't eat with anybody. He only ate alone. Eventually, he spoke about his family and how he hadn't let them down, but how it felt like he had let them down. I suppose being in the wrong place at the wrong time is an easy way to describe it, but not very easy for Clive. But yeah, he's got a mind. He's got an encyclopedia mind. He's got a memory like I've never seen in anybody. He remembers names, facts, figures, dates, times, sequence of events. He comes across, and he's proven this, has been very loyal, with integrity. Is a war hero. I've met people he saved in his army days back in Rhodesia. What a part, part of the people I speak to on a daily basis have come forward and told me stories about his bravery. David McGillivray being one of them. I think he's been on one of the shows recently. His horse was shot from beneath him, and he was just waiting for death. And Clive, on the retreat, as they were, turned and went back and saved McGillivray, got him from under his horse and took him to safety. And I've heard stories like that about him. And it's a shame and it's awful that someone like that, where we don't, not many people don't know this side of Clive Freeman, but I do. And a man like that to be, rotting in a British jail for a crime that never was, it's a travesty. It's disgusting. It's despicable. I don't know how they can sleep at night, those that know that this man is innocent and yet are doing nothing about it. And thank you and other people like you for allowing us to voice our opinions and concerns for Clive on these shows, because every little bit of public awareness helps. And hopefully, I hope that if and when we do get Clive released, that he can say thank you personally. But I know he wants to do that to every single person who's out here fighting for him. He's desperate to thank every single person individually.
Final thing for you both. Is there anything that people watching this show at the moment can do? Can they write to him? Can they sign a petition? What's anything that they can do?
Looking at ways of putting something out there in a petition, and that's going to emerge in the next couple of weeks or so. So we're looking at that. Petitioning Parliament has to be about the general issue of public interest. You can't run a petition on an individual. So we're looking at ways of doing that. So at the moment, I think it's about keeping up to date with what's going on, the Daily Mail and podcasts like yourselves and others, and hopefully we're going to see wider interest in the national media. They could write to him at Leyhill Prison. That would be actually, he would really appreciate that. He's had lots of correspondence over the years, but I'm sure Terry will agree that Clive, really appreciates members of the public. At least he can see some feedback. He's seeing the stuff going out, and he's now can get. Obviously, he's not allowed access at the moment. I'm his voice until we can get him out. One of the things that would be useful is if they wrote to the Secretary of State for Justice, he has the power now, and has had for a long time, to release prisoners on compassionate grounds. Now, and that would be pending this going to the appeal court. As you've already heard, that Clive is not in good health. He's 80 years of age. He's hobbling around, and he needs to get out at least while we can get the appeal, so that he can release him now on compassionate grounds. He's not going to run off or fly off anywhere. So there's an opportunity to at least get him out of jail so he can be looked after and cared for, and have a little bit of life whilst this is finally resolved, hopefully in his favour.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank Tony and Terry. The amount of work that you do and your campaign is absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure Clive appreciates you both very much.